Secrets from a Coach. Thrive and maximise your potential in the evolving workplace. Your weekly podcast with Debbie Green of Wishfish and Laura Thomson-Staveley of Phenomenal Training. Debs.
Law, you all right?
Yeah. How's your week going?
It's going really super busy. Lots going on. A sense of trying to fit stuff in and pleasing other people and making sure they're all right before myself. So obviously that leads to potential less tolerance at times. So so it's been one of those weeks, and it's only the middle of the month-ish.
Wonderful.
How's yours?
Riddle me this, right? So
Go on.
I'm sensing a pattern that is starting to form, and it's not really a new one, but it's starting to have more impact. There I am. I have time managed my day like a good one. I have planned every single 15-minute chunk. I start the day feeling really on top and empowered, and by 11 o'clock, it's already scuppered. I'm already behind on something. And it's really intriguing me, Debs, about how, we all know that it's ourselves that are the unlocker for success.
Yeah.
But also, is it actually ourselves that is the one person that could potentially stitch us up, which is why we kind of thought it would be really useful to end our 4-part focus looking at opportunity mindset.
Yeah.
About an awareness about a topic that is increasing in areas of interest. So, Debs, what is going on with me where I set up this amazing plan of action?
Yeah.
I start the day as a superhero, and by lunchtime, I'm feeling like a bit, like I'm failing because I haven't done all the things I said I was going to.
Yeah, so I think, Law, that's probably one of your saboteurs that's coming to play in the playground with you. And I would probably put a punt on the fact that yours is probably a hyper-achiever saboteur. So let me explain, first of all, what that is. So first of all, we all have a judge that sits within us, okay? It's non-discriminatory. It just is there for us all of the time. And it spans cultures, genders, age groups, everything. Because what it is, it's attached to the brain. So it's attached to the functions of the brain that are focused on survival. And we develop our saboteurs potentially in early childhood to survive what we call perceived threats. And both physical and emotional. And by the time we're probably adults, these saboteurs are no longer needed, but they become those invisible inhabitants in our mind. So our mind and our thoughts can be our best friend, but it can also be our worst. So when you're talking about your saboteur, so first of all, we all have a judge. And that's what we call the master saboteur. Everybody has one. Everybody suffers from it. It just depends how much airtime you give it, whether it's loud in your mind and sends you off track, or you learn to recognize when it's arrived and just quieten it down a bit. It will never go, but it will always be there. And what it does, it means you constantly find fault with yourself, or you beat yourself up because you haven't achieved your plan on a page that you set out to do. So, and therefore it can encourage, I suppose, things like anxiety, stress, disappointment, shame, guilt. So all of those behaviors that don't serve us well. And it's that voice that sometimes we mistake as tough love, but it's not. It's actually the voice that is saying, you're not maybe good enough, or you should have done better, or you should have gone out and sorted everybody out, and so everything from there. So we have a judge, and as we say, when it arrives, we can hear it. And if we ignore it, the louder and louder it will get. So it will send you off track, and it will make you feel awful. And because you're choosing to ignore it, it just gets louder in our minds, and then little things go wrong. So you might just think, oh, it's arrived. I always say mine arrives, and I now have learnt, and we'll touch on the work that I experienced, which made a massive difference for me, was accepting that the judge has arrived, and then not then engaging my saboteurs. And I'll share mine with you as well. But I would say, Law, yours is probably, or one of them, because we have a few, maybe the hyperachiever saboteur, where you are dependent on constant performance and achievement for self-respect and self-validation. And it keeps you focused mainly on the external success rather than the internal criteria for happiness. So it can tend to workaholics, It can cause you to fall out of love with the work you're doing. Procrastination might come into it. So it's really important that you think about when your judges arrived and the saboteurs can then play in the playground. That's how you feel. Oh my God, I've lost my superpower. You haven't. It's still there. It's just what your mind is telling you. So you have to flip it with curiosity.
Blimey, Debs. Thank you
Brilliant.
so much. Is it a symptom of hyperachiever saboteur that I'm actually quite pleased that it's the hyperachiever one?
Yes. Yeah.
Next question I want to ask is, how hyperachieving is my hyperachieving?
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
Do you know, even the word saboteur, I remember a conversation I had with someone ages ago. It must have been with you, actually, talking about saboteurs, because I know you've done loads of learning around it. So I can't wait to hear some of the experiences you've then had, so we can then all kind of have a think about what that might mean for us.
Yeah.
But even the definition of the word saboteur, so it comes from the French word sabot, which are those little wooden clogs that they used to wear out when working on the fields. And the saboteurs was the name that was given to the people that would then, with their wooden clogs, hit the machines and destroy stuff, basically, to be able to stop progress. So just as you were talking about that judge kind of hitting you with all of this, internal negative talk, I was just imagining this like wooden clog just hitting your brain, going, you got the plan, but don't worry about the plan. Do something else instead.
Yeah.
That will be even more high achieving, because you might have set the day to do 10 things. 10 things. I'll get it done by lunch and I'll then do another 10. And if you then get towards the end of the day thinking I've only done 4 things, then wow, the urge to then overwork, to dissolve boundaries, to then get resentful of the other aspects of your life because it's stopping you from doing this thing that actually, had you been able to work a bit more cleanly and a bit less vulnerable to the saboteur that's inside, you would have got to where your original plan was. So I just think that is really fascinating. So already I'm now starting to reflect on, okay, so what might that mean in terms of not listening quite so intently to the saboteur voice? But Debs, in your experience in the coaching environment, what impact does it have on people in their workplace, not only performance but overall wellness? What impact does it have when people start to get their head around understanding their saboteur and not listening to it so much? What impact does it have?
It has a really big impact, actually, because like everything else, it raises your awareness to what is actually going on. So because we don't always connect with our conscious mind, we think, oh, these things are just happening for a reason, or it's just my unlucky day, or we try and justify it that way. But when we stop and just think about, so what was that thing that then triggered my thoughts, that then impacted on my feelings and then my behaviors and actions? And when we slow it down a little bit and we explore it, and we always talk about have a curious mind around it. So I wonder what that was all about. I feel like this, so something's triggered in my mind, and it might be subconscious, because we've learnt since childhood to call up those saboteurs, probably without even asking. So we have to think about, when we unpick that and start to understand it, I've watched people just go, oh my God, that makes so much sense. And then what you find they do is they then are more aware, they're more mindful, they recognize when the saboteur has arrived in the room with them, and they will then do stuff to either flip it or take a different tack or talk to themselves differently. So you can see the immediate impact it has. And I think what I found, certainly when I first did this work on myself around it, mine's a pleaser. And that's one of mine. So we have maybe 3, 4 top ones. I think it's about 10 in total. I'd have to probably check that. But mine is always the pleaser. It has always been the pleaser one. And that was really interesting. So that is so it shows up by gaining acceptance and affection, by helping and pleasing and rescuing others constantly. So you lose sight of your own needs, and you can become resentful of others because no one's noticing about you. And now I've worked on years on myself about this, because it's not always about me, and it's actually can mean that people become overly dependent on you. So it's really interesting where I have to watch, especially with what's going on with my mum and dad at the moment, that I'm not pleasing them all the time. And I think it links into the rescuer as well from the drama triangle. So it's that bit that says, actually, do I need that? Do I need that saboteur to be playing in this moment? Because I have a strong need to be liked. And by helping people and doing rescuing for them, actually, it's not helping me all the time. I had to work on myself to accept me for me and that I'm okay. And that if I'm under stress or I'm lacking in tolerance or there's loads going on or I feel overwhelmed, then my pleaser saboteur will be the one that shows up. So it shows up in, I'll try and fit people into my calendar. Yeah, that's fine. So again, like you said, your boundaries go out the window. So it's really fascinating to be able to recognize it and say, okay, thank you for showing up. I always, and for those watching, but for those listening, I always know when it comes and I sort of turn to my right, put my hand up to stop it and go, thank you for showing up. I appreciate you turning up to show me another way and to quieten it down. So I acknowledge the fact that it's arrived and I say it physically out loud. People might think I'm a bit weird. But when I work with clients and we do that as an exercise where we know when it's coming in, so you can hear the language. And when we do particular work on saboteurs and judgment and things like that, I can hear it with them. So I can say, who's just shown up? And they go, oh my God, yeah, because we don't see it all the time. But the more we get used to recognizing it, the more we can cope and deal with it. And I always say, thank you for showing up. Stop it. So I've acknowledged it. And because I've acknowledged my judge and my saboteurs don't have to come as well, it quietens that little voice in my head because it's that moment that enables me to choose a different way, say something different. And when we're working with clients, we get them to reframe their language and explore what that is about so they can navigate their way through changing a behavior or a way of working that's better for them. And the results are amazing, because people suddenly go, oh, that makes so much sense to me now.
Wow. So in a moment, I think what would be brilliant is if you just give us a bit of an array. So the buffet of saboteurs that we all might be inadvertently
channeling.
So just to sort of wrap up so I can get my head around this.
Yeah.
A saboteur or the saboteur voice that comes in is the point at which when everything is sunny and lovely, it's a thing that drives you and motivates you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're someone that likes to help others or you like to have that sense of achievement, then on the great days, that gives you a buzz.
Absolutely.
But the saboteur is when that turns into, rather than a buzz, it turns into worry, anxiety, which can then drive behaviours that actually wouldn't be the ones that you would set out to approach the next working year, for example, but it might be that you slip into without realising.
Yes.
To what extent do other people trigger the saboteur voice? So is this all just one person sitting on their own playing mind games with themselves? Or to what extent do other interactions with other people, you've read an email, for example. So just join the dots up for us there. To what extent might we need to watch out for others' behaviours triggering some of those things?
Yeah, that's such a good thing because ultimately the judge and the saboteur is ours. It isn't anybody else's. But you're right, it could be triggered because of an email or somebody might have said something maybe as a quip to you. Oh, you're always rolling, trying to fit everybody in. Do you not ever make time for yourself? And it might be on a not so good day. You might go, oh, maybe they think I'm not good enough. Maybe they think I haven't got it. So it's that, and it just depends on how well we are, how well we're looking after our mind health, because sometimes we do pick up on those triggers. Now, their intent and wasn't anything like that, but because of where we're at in that moment, we're then letting it grow arms and legs. So we then think that, oh, maybe they think I'm not good enough, or maybe they think that I can't do it, or maybe I'm not good enough. And then that feeds back into our imposter syndrome sometimes, which is those behaviors that come out of that, where we think, see, and then we go looking for stuff to reinforce it. So what we need to do is if we get triggered, as we always say, by an email or by somebody else, it's not taking yourself off there because your judge is going, happy days. I'm now going to play in this because somebody's opened the mind of this individual for me to get in and start weaving away to reinforce that and go, you see, really quite, they're not very, you're not very good. Someone's just told you that. And this
hitting
is
yourself
all
with wooden clogs.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is all going on in your mind. And if you don't stop and recognize it, then it will just continue to cycle around, and over time it becomes a disabler to your performance, how you're feeling about yourself, you know, which isn't healthy. It's not a good place to be.
No.
So all the things we talk about when it comes to well-being, mindfulness, self-care, looking out for yourself, putting in boundaries, making sure you're living that compassionate existence, that can stop and help the judge coming out at you so loudly. But it starts with yourself.
Love it. So I'll tell you, one of the things that I'm really starting to learn, and I know it's one of those no Sherlock kind of moments, but
They normally are, Law.
I'm really starting to appreciate that all of the stuff that people bang on about sleep well, have good
Yeah.
exercise, it's not just about maintaining good physical health. What
Mhm.
I'm really starting to learn is the less physically well you are, or your lifestyle choices and all that kind of stuff, the more vulnerable you are to your brain then starting to go into all of these not great
Absolutely.
thinking patterns. And I'd never really quite joined the dots up. So not only is it mind impacting body,
Yeah.
but actually your body can impact your mind as well. And if
Yeah.
you're not feeling good relative to your age, for
Yeah.
example, so I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are feeling a bit, oh god, I feel a bit old at the moment. And then because for whatever reason, at this time of year as well, depending on when you're listening to this, if the
Yeah.
weather isn't luring you outside to take a fresh air walk,
Yeah.
if it feels like actually all you want to do is kind of hibernate, what that can then mean is if your mind can get a bit restless. So
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that I'm then really starting to see is I get it now why people for years have banged on about healthy lifestyle,
Yeah.
not just to try and maintain good physical health, but if you're it makes you more vulnerable for
It
your
does.
brain to then get lost in itself and
Yeah.
take you down a bit of a path that actually doesn't lead to a calm
No.
outlook to it. And
Yeah.
for linking it from a work point of view, you may not be someone that is observant of your thinking, but it comes out in racing heart,
Yeah.
headaches,
Yeah.
not putting your hand up to challenge something. If
Mhm.
you're in a meeting and you think, I don't really agree with that, but it impacts your confidence
It does. Yeah.
and your
Massive.
sense of self to go, actually, I'm empowered. So it can have all sorts of ramifications.
It really can, and I think and that's why excuse me, that's why people need to talk about some of this stuff. And if you are a colleague, you don't have to be a manager of somebody, but if you're working with other people, if you're noticing enough and you care enough to notice, then you might see those shifts in behavior, or you might notice that person isn't speaking up. And it's the kindness that comes out that just quietly goes and says to somebody, I've noticed you're not quite yourself. I could be completely wrong. But I just observed this today. And they may go, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't realize. But then it's the safe space for then. So, I'm here if you want to talk it through. And that's, I suppose, where it's good to talk some of this stuff, because if we don't, and we're all only talking to ourselves, we choose our narrative. And if we're not able to flip the narrative, recognize the judge, and it's a saboteur that's playing, then we can, as I say, continue to spiral down. So when people come to coaches, therapy, whatever, the space that we create is for people to just talk and just to be heard. But we can do that. I believe we can do that for our colleagues in the workspace. If we just go, oh, let me just create a space where there's this confidentiality, obviously, but actually I'm just going to give them the space to just talk. I'm not going to fix it for them, because that's your driver then trying to fix it for them. This is about them just exploring it, but with curiosity and just an open mind, just to get it out so that it stops whirling around in their own internal head. And then it might not make sense to you if you're the listener, but it certainly makes sense to them. But you've just given the time to think and speak. And I think that's super important. And that's why it's good to talk.
So, Debs, in a moment, you can give us a list of the top saboteurs, and
I
then
can.
as we listen in our minds, we can think, "Yep, I'm a bit of that," and then that enables us to lead to a bit of a call to action and what that might mean.
Yes.
But I want to pick up on the K word that you just mentioned: kindness.
Yes.
So currently, as we know, we're involved in conference circuits at the moment, and I have heard two CEOs from two completely different industries talk from the stage about the benefit of kindness
Yeah.
and practicing kindness in everyday internal interactions
Mm-hmm.
to then be able to deliver a good service externally. And these are billion-pound businesses. These aren't kind of small. Well, I mean, not saying big is better than small in terms of company size, but what they're making, they're seeing, talking about the link between the commercial benefits of kindness.
Yeah.
If we're kind to each other, then we're far more likely to help each other out,
Yes.
collaborate. So just you talking about kindness,
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a bit. I'm certainly feeling, I'm sure you are as well, a bit of a shift towards the soft aspects, the intangible aspects of how we all work with each other.
Definitely.
There's there is a commercial benefit from that because
Yeah.
people then want to hang around, they want to deliver their best work, and if part of that is then being able to help each other out to
Yeah.
boost confidence, help someone just sort of get over themselves,
Yeah.
then this is one of many bits of kit that we cover on our podcast that just enables us to have a bit of a language that we can use to help ourselves and others.
Definitely, Law.
So take us through this roll call. So I'm seeing these like nasty characters there
Yes.
with wooden clogs, determined to beat us.
They're ready.
Right from the get-go, 9 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
Potentially, we could stitch ourselves up because we're listening to these voices.
Yeah.
So give us a bit of an overview, Debs, of each one, and then we can
Okay.
arrive at a call to action.
All right, I'll do that. Okay, Law, you're ready for this. So this is based on the work, first of all, of Shazad Shamin, and he does a lot of work around positive intelligence. You can check him out. He's on www.positiveintelligence.com. And if you are intrigued to know what your key saboteurs are, you can do your own saboteur assessment online, which is fascinating. And then for me, the idea is if anybody's listening and they go and choose to do that, it's then just to raise your awareness to it. I would always then say, go and talk to somebody about what's come out for your results. Because if you're not talking to somebody else about it, then you're just letting it play out in your head and you're not necessarily coming up with strategies, plans, actions to be able to move forward from it. So that's first of all. I did the work with him a couple of years ago now, but it was just so powerful that I love it. And it does come into every day and we see it every day. So as well as your judge, which is the biggest one, which is the one that everybody has, there are a list of them. So, and I'll pull out the ones that I see most of the time, I would say. So we have the avoider. They, if you like, focus on the positives and the pleasant in an extreme way. So things like saying yes to things they aren't actually wanting to do, that type of thing. But they lie because positive, not avoiding your problems. So it's a really interesting one. They really don't like unpleasant tasks or conflicts, so they'll avoid it at all costs. So saying yes, being too over cautious is not going to help them. So that's the one. You've also got the controller who runs on what we call anxiety-based needs to take charge. They want to control the situation. They connect with others through competition, actually, and we see a lot of this sometimes. And they are up for the challenge, and they seem to challenge people regardless of what's going on. And that's always an interesting one because they believe, and because it's a bit of a lie, that you need the controller to generate the best results from the people around you. You don't. Okay. And so that's what can come out. Hyperachiever we'd spoken about, which you mentioned. The hyper rational ones is they possess what we call an intensive and active mind that comes across sometimes as being intellectually arrogant or secretive. So they don't let people come in to their inner self. They don't be vulnerable all of the time. They prefer to just watch what's going on. So that's one, which is an interesting one to see because people can sometimes feel that that's quite a cold behavior. It's not. It's just they're protecting themselves. If we're going back to why we have the judge in the first place. Stickler is that need for perfection. So if you have a perfection driver, you take organization so far that it makes others around you anxious and uptight because this can feed into having stickler and controller. If you've got that as your key saboteurs, then that could be a recipe for disaster for others. So again, it's recognize it, what you're doing. So a perfectionist is the big one on there. They can be irritable, tense, sarcastic at times as well, highly critical of themselves and maybe their other people around them as well. because they want to, they're stickler for stuff, if that makes sense. Victim, which we talk about in the drama triangle on previous pods, where if criticised or misunderstood, they tend to withdraw and they might pout or they might get sulky. They can be fairly dramatic and temperamental, and they sort of can repress rage, which is something. They haven't necessarily got a voice or don't know how to articulate how they're feeling, that they might feel like they're being done to. So that's always an interesting one to explore. The pleaser one I've mentioned is mine. That's my key saboteur, if you like, as well as a couple of others. And there's restless as well. They just are looking for excitement all of the time. Next one. They don't like to stay still. They love distractions as well. So they have this constant stream of distractions going on for them. And they can be too scattered. And they are juggling many different things, which for them, they might go, that works for them. But for other people around them, it creates some nervousness. But it also can potentially drive that desire to want to perform, to be, an achiever. So these will interact with each other around it. And then the last one that is there is hypervigilant. They're always anxious. They have chronic doubts about themselves and others. They have an extraordinary sensitivity to danger signals, as Shazad said, and they are waiting for things to go wrong. So again, that can play out in different behaviours with different people, depending on what the story is that sits behind that, as to what happened, because something happened where they suddenly dialed up this saboteur to protect them. Remember, it's about protection initially. But as adults, we then take it in forward. So when we're thinking about how we can overcome some of that stuff, we have to, if you like, dial up. Shazad always calls this our sage powers, our wisdom, if you like. I always think of Yoda whenever whenever you listen into that, and there's stuff that's within our gift. So all of these powers that we have are within our gift to tap into. So they are, as I've talked about already, they explore with curiosity and an open mind. What's going on here? I wonder what is causing that. And really, self-reflection can make a huge help. But talking to others, empathize is another one. Empathize with yourself, empathize with others, and bring compassion and understanding to a situation. Because if we can understand it, we can make sense of it, and therefore our brain can work with that. It's the unknown or the can't make sense of it that creates even more chaos in our heads. Empathize, be kind. This is making sure you're empathizing, innovate. How can I create maybe a new way of working, thinking about this? So thinking outside the box. This is where talking to other people can help. I don't want to be a people pleaser for the rest of my life. It's okay when it works and it's positive. It's when it tips to the negative, and then it has an impact on me, thinking maybe I'm not good enough, I'll do more, and that's not good. So again, it sort of links in with that. And then navigating your way through that, whatever path you've chosen to explore, do it with support, and just explore what your underlying values are. How does that drive you forward? And then make a decision. So activate is the last superpower that we have. Take a decisive action, whatever that might be, without the distress, interference, or distractions of the saboteurs. So set out your plan of action. What will I do? And I suppose that comes into the world of coaching, where we enable people to come up with their own action, because we do know, if a saboteur is playing, we actually do have the capability to remedy that. We have that within ourselves, and you might just need the space to explore. What is that all about? What could I do about it? And then do it with some safety net around you.
So, Debs, basically, is this the Star Wars world of the Force versus the dark side?
Absolutely, Law. Absolutely.
Just I was listening to you talk. It was triggered when you were talking about Yoda, and I just thought all of this stuff, all of the voider, the controller, the hyper, all of that stuff that can go on. That's the dark side, isn't it?
The dark side, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's about accessing your Force, whether it is Yoda that's in your mind, or but that sage advice, that's kind of wise bit.
Yeah.
Wow, I just think this is such a fascinating topic.
Yeah.
And Depending on the type of role you've got, whether you're in work or out of work at the moment, or just listening to this for a general wash and brush up on
Yeah.
life's skills, the link this has between the evolving world of work is increasingly more and more demands have been put on
Yes.
us in the world of work, and more emphasis put on how we interact, not just the buttons that we press, the machines are doing that, but how we interact, whether that is service, care, education, whatever way in which that's been measured. So our character and our personality and our mood and presence in that moment is far more part of a typical role now than maybe it would have been 20, 30 years ago. So how you are and how you show up is as much a part of the job as the skills that you might have tucked away inside. It's how you display those. And are we then displaying those in an emotionally intelligent way? And I guess this is all part of that big bucket of skills. So you might work with some people who love this stuff, and you can talk about saboteurs, and you can have a chat, over your pot noodle about who's got what saboteur. If actually that's just not the type of environment you work in, I guess this is all under that big umbrella of emotional intelligence.
Yes.
And one of those pillars, which is self-awareness.
Yeah, absolutely.
How well do I know myself, and how well can I manage my disruptive aspects to then be able to have the impact and influence I want, which impacts all sorts of things. So, Debs, big topic.
Huge topic.
I love the way you've explained it in such an easy way. I've got wooden sabots in my mind, but it's the Star Wars thing for me. Am I going to go to the Force?
Dark side.
The dark side. Where am I going to go is up to me. And we've all got the potential for both, sort of with that. So if there were a practical call to action, as a result of thinking about knowing your personal saboteurs as part of really focusing on that opportunity mindset, what would that call to action be?
Yeah, so my call to action would be to, if you're feeling a bit blur, your judge or your saboteur has been playing around in your mind without you probably realizing it. So if you're noticing that you're feeling a bit blur, just pause and say to yourself, what is that all about? Where has that come from? What is triggering that within me? Because the more awareness you bring to it, the more you can make a change. So I'd say raise your awareness, but looking after all of the 4 cornerstones that make us great humans, which is, as you said, Laura, your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual health, making sure you're doing things that are good for you.
Lovely. My share the secret would be is to think of someone that you are working alongside at the moment, or a past buddy, someone from before. Get them to listen to this and then have a chat about it. And actually, it triggers all sorts of thoughts. This isn't to upset people or to get overly analytical. It's more to just be a bit lighter with yourself. Sometimes our brains take us on these kind of dark little journeys, and it's completely natural.
It's
normal, much so there's a whole website that's been dedicated to it. So I think that could be quite comforting to know, okay, it's not just me. Everyone has the tendency towards this. It's part of the human bit, the bit of being human, which is why, as you said, it's good to talk and good to listen to this. But the benefit, I think, of a bit of theory is it gives you a good conversation starter.
Yeah, it does.
And I guess it all comes from the question of, how can I set myself up for success? What's going to work for me, and what might that mean for the year ahead?
Yeah, and creating, if you like, that optimistic mindset, and that's where it all comes into, and it starts with kindness. I'm a big believer in that. Be kind is what I would say. I've loved this one. This is huge, Laura. This is a huge topic, and it fits in to so many different elements of how we are, and EI, as you said, emotional intelligence, the drama triangle that we've spoken about in the past, our drivers, our script drivers, how we transact with people, parent, adult, child. It is massive, but all of these things sort of weave into understanding yourself better.
Love it. So, in the old days, Debs, we could have sat alongside each other in a physical working environment, and you could cheer yourself up by the chemistry of the sort of team that's around you, which could either be lift you or sort of drain you.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people are working in a hybrid way. So we are going to explore in our next 4-part series looking at healthy hybrid habits.
Yes.
And now we are 3 years on, really, since hybrid became a word. It wasn't just about how you fueled your car. It became a way of working. So there's loads of research research and stats. So I can't wait to really pick over what is out there in terms of how we can work and connect in a really healthy, I was going to say high achieving way. That's my little judge coming out.
That's it, going. Your saboteurs going, hi, I'm here.
Let's not do 4. Let's do 8-part series.
Yeah.
No, 4-part series. That's plenty. So I think that'll be really good. Weaving in a bit of current hot data with also some of those kind of sage bits of wisdom that can help set us up.
Definitely.
So Debs, have a judgment-free, wonderful week ahead. Full
You
of
too,
kindness.
Law.
I think that's going to be my word of the week.
Be kind, with kindness. Absolutely. You too, Law. Have a good week.
Love you.
Love you. Bye.